My name is Marcia Sloan Latta. I serve as Vice President for Advancement here, and we are so very, very pleased you can join us on this wonderful early spring morning for what I know is going to be a fantastic talk and discussion. We all know, of course, that the heart of any academic institution is the library. And so it seems most fitting that as we have our first spring session that we hear from a grand leader of the world's largest library. So Dr. Fell will introduce our speaker here in a few minutes, but before that, I do want to let you know that next month is our final Spring Fridays at Findlay. It will be on April 27th. There are sheets, registration sheets on the table, and Cindy Leahy or anyone working at the tables, the registration tables as you exit, will be happy to help you register. The topic for next month will be changing trends in animal care. And many of you who know Findlay well know that University of Findlay does all things animals really, really well. And this panel will be indicative of that. We have several alumni or other friends who are deeply involved with our programs on the panel. We have Dr. Todd Beckett, who runs a couple of animal care clinics in the Columbus area, and of course the Beckett name is well known here in Findlay. Dr. Jennifer Smith, who received her undergraduate degree here, went on and got her vet degree from Michigan State. And Dr. Smith has an unusual job. She is over all of the lab animals at the Henry Ford Health System, including 100 bloodhounds for heart research there. We have one of our own recent grads, Pam Pavronis, graduated in 2015 in equestrian, and she is an entrepreneur and has a fast-growing equine massage and equine therapy business. And we have a couple of large animal veterinarians coming, and also Paul Kalmbach, president of Kalmbach Feeds. So you can see we have the entire spectrum covered, and we do hope that you will come out for that. That Fridays at Findlay will be held in the AMU. So I know you're accustomed to coming here, but this room was being used for something else, so we will be in the AMU on April 27th, and we hope to see you all there. I will introduce our student who's active in Christian ministries to give the prayer and blessing for the food that we just consumed. And following Cody's prayer, Dr. Fell will give the introduction of Dr. Hayden. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Cody Towle. Cody is a junior nursing major here at University of Findlay, and as I mentioned, he's very active in our campus ministries program, and he will bless our food.
Good morning. Let's pray. Lord, we come before you this morning thankful for and humbled by the opportunity to meet together, to fellowship, and to further our knowledge and experience. As we do that, God, I ask that you would help us remember your hand in all we do and the freedom we have through Jesus Christ to walk with you throughout every day. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Let me add my welcome to that of Marcia's. Delighted to have all of you here this morning. I love it that Findlay loves books. Reading is something I promote. And today it is a great honor to introduce our speaker, Dr. Carla Hayden. Before I do so, I'd like to take a moment to thank Congressman Bob Latta, who was very instrumental in bringing Dr. Hayden to us. Congressman Latta, thank you. Dr. Hayden is here for National Reading Week. Also, it happens to be National Women's Week, so it's a really important month. Did you know that? Never mind the snow in March, it's a good month. So it's most fitting that she joins us during this month. And our speaker is someone who is making history in many ways, both as the Library of Congress's first woman and first African American librarian. Dr. Hayden was nominated to her role overseeing the world's largest library by President Obama and confirmed by the U.S. Senate in 2016, and she has a 10-year assignment. So we'll be working with Dr. Hayden for a long time. I'm happy to hear that. It's not the same thing as tenure, but 10 years. Her responsibilities include leadership of the nation's library's collection of more than 164 million items, including the historic Thomas Jefferson collection of books and maps, the National Film Registry, and the National Sound Recording Registry. Prior to her latest post, Dr. Hayden served as CEO of the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Maryland, and previously served in library leadership roles at the Chicago Public Library and at the University of Pittsburgh. In 2003-2004, she served as president of the American Library Association. Dr. Hayden received her BA from Roosevelt University and her MA and PhD from the University of Chicago's Graduate Library School. Please welcome Dr. Carla Hayden.
Thank you so much, and I must tell you, I'm delighted to be here, and to start out with a full confession, I have already received directions to the Deeds candy store. So I'm all in. I'm all in, but I really, really appreciate being here, and I want to thank Congressman Latta for making sure that I was able to visit. We have a good working relationship in Washington, and I was able to meet Dr. Latta there as well, and they said, you must come, and I'm so glad that we were able to arrange it, because when they said you could come during National Reading Week and Women's History Month, it just all fit together, and I thank you. And President Fell, we've already connected. She did tell me I had on the wrong color. So you should know that she is very much aware of that, but I really appreciate it. And I've already had a chance to meet my, as I call them, library peeps from the Findlay Public Library and the university and college libraries that are here as well. And a person that I will be spending some time with at the Mesa Museum shortly afterwards. Another full disclosure, I started as a children's librarian, and I remain that at heart. And so the opportunity to be with a noted children's literature illustrator, Mr. Willenbrandt, shortly afterwards with children, and to really interact with them is going to be very special. So thank you for that. I feel like that in a way, being here at this time, talking about and hopefully having a discussion about the importance of early literacy and continuing to support literacy in all its forms is somewhat like preaching to the choir. I have an understanding that the Fridays at Findlay are really for people who are interested in helping communities who are part of the larger community of caring. And so I know that many of you are very aware about the importance of literacy and reading, and have had experiences in your own life that have brought you here today. But even choirs need to practice. And especially at a time when the very concept of literacy and why do we need books, physical books. People are saying you can get it all online now. You can just Google something. Librarians Google, so you should know that. Okay, we do use Google. But why is it important? And aren't kids all looking at tablets? I did have an experience recently, and those of you who have been around young people now, the digital natives, these are young people who grew up, who are growing up without the concept of having to get up to turn the dial on a television. The idea is something foreign to them. I just recently saw a 4.5-year-old with her new tablet. She's about this tall, stand there to demonstrate it to me, and she put in her password. And I thought, a 4.5-year-old with a password. This is a different world. This is, how do you relate? What is that? But what studies have confirmed and are really reinforcing is what has held true for a number of years, that the first 3 years of life in terms of developing language skills, social skills, but especially a relationship with language are still critically important. And using picture books, having that experience of connecting with text in a comforting setting can be one of the most powerful influences on young people. It helps in terms of young brains, and people have talked about what it's like to tell, and has anybody here, you can raise your hand, tried to tell a story on an e-device with a 2-year-old or 3-year-old? Has anybody tried to do that? There are a lot of oh, you have, and you should see his face. It's like, yeah, that was an experience. At 2 and 3, looking and trying to do Curious George on a tablet. I don't know this person, but he's saying impossible. It's terrible. It's horrible, because what happens is you are spending more time swishing, interacting with the child about that thing. And if you push it and the picture jumps, and all of this is happening, so the interaction is more about this device and less about the tactile experience of taking time, of looking at one page, talking with the child, picking, what do you see? As Mr. Hillenbrand mentioned, that you're not telling them the sky is blue. You're saying, what color do you think the sky is? That you are having that interaction with the child, and you are building their ability to see and to understand words. Most children benefit from that interaction with a caring adult in those early ages to get them to have that relationship with text. My mom is here, and I point her out, and there's nothing better, and I know, and there are students here, and you should know that there's nothing better to reach a more mature part of your life and to be able to have your mom sit there and feel proud, because you do. Part of it is because you put them through a lot. And so you're blessed if you get to make it up later on. So that's why I make sure I take her with me to say, see, Mom, it was okay. It turned out okay. I was fortunate to have a family that read, and that one of my joys was to be able to read by myself, that I could read. And then I sit there and my mom was reading at the same time, and then it was like, something's wrong. It's like, oh, I'm reading aloud and she's reading silently. But to have that background. With young people that are in homes that is not the case, they are truly at a disadvantage. And what we have found now is that with young people that don't have early literacy experiences in the home, when there's not even a magazine or a newspaper or anything, and you don't see adults reading for pleasure, because that's the point, reading for pleasure, before you have to learn how to decode if you're reading for pleasure, that they actually start school with a 30 million word gap. That by 5, there are 30 million words that they haven't heard or used in context. So when you are starting out in kindergarten and your vocabulary and your understanding of the world has been limited, you also are starting out somewhat behind. Now, the good part, and this is something that I was really excited to be able to participate in, is there are so many partnerships in communities to help bridge that gap. And just this morning, I was with the representatives from Your United Way and the Imagination Library Foundation, Miss Dolly Parton's foundation. That is a wonderful, wonderful program. And the local program here has just celebrated having their 100,000th book given to children in this area. So here they are. Please give them a hand. And I was already a Dolly Parton fan, but now I am truly one of her biggest cheerleaders, because without a lot of fanfare, she started about 20 years ago a program in honor of her father, who could not read or write. He raised 12 children, he was smart, everything, but he never could read or write. And she started a program to deliver free to children every month, anew from birth to the age of 5, a quality children's book. And they would end up with their own personal library that they could write in the books. And that's the thing about literacy too. You have books to read, you have books to borrow, you're just surrounded by books. But that these young people would receive these free books every month. And she said that the joy that they got, one, it was something that they could own, and they were getting mail, and they had this library in their homes. Now, she did say that when the book stopped, she got a lot of letters. And she still gets letters because they kind of got used to this free book thing. But that's when they would get their library cards and start to be introduced to the concept of borrowing. Now, the 3 million word gap has also been challenged by associations that work in communities with pediatricians. And the American Association of Pediatricians has a program that provides books and tips for parents in hospitals before the baby arrives. They're in there telling them, read to your baby right now, to hear the voice, to have that. And those programs have started where when you have your visit with your baby, you get reading tips as well. And communities all over the country are working together, and different organizations are working together to do that. However, you also have to work with the fact that there's something called reading guilt. I know everybody's saying, what? What? I didn't finish the book? That's the whole point. And there's a book about that called The Reading Zone. How to Help Kids Become Passionate, Skilled, Habitual, and Critical Readers. And it's in its second edition. And basically it talks about what happens. You've given them books to own, you've done all of these things, they're loving reading, and then they get to school. And it's the learning of translating, and this one says bedtime stories for young brains, but translating this into language or that. And so that's sometimes a little hard work, decoding and doing that. And unfortunately, there are times in schools and curriculums where reading is made to be a chore. You have your reading list, or you have to read these things. And I know that there are some adults in this audience who grew up with the concept that you have to, if you start a book, you have to finish it. It's like eat your vegetables, right? You may not like the book, but you have to finish it. And I meet adults now, especially book club members, who talk about that. I hate this book, but I have to go to book club, right? And you got to finish it, and you get the audio book because you just can't stand it and everything. So this concept of how do you keep kids engaged, how do you keep them through this stage of required reading? Well, maybe you don't require the reading. Maybe in the reading zone, what they try to recapture is that joy of reading. And you have the opportunity to let young people keep that joy going. And what they do is they put the books into 3 categories, and even adults have it. There are holiday books, the easy first read favorites, Cat in the Hat. What is the other one that the little boy told me as I was trying to read it to a group? That's not my favorite book. It was The Little Engine That Could. I thought that was a natural. He raised his hand. He was 5. He said, that's not my favorite book. Okay, great. But those are your favorites. And then you have the just right books, that the right book at the right time, even if it's Captain Underpants. All right, that's the right book. That's the one that you're reading now, you're loving it, you're growing it. And then there are the challenge books that are a little bit hard. You might read them later, but you put them aside. For me, that was Hamilton by Ron Chernow. I knew about the play, I saw the book, but that's not how he could get that play from that book is still something to think about. So adults have their things. So you really let them pick. But then there's the concept that there are too many books in the world to spend your precious time in life reading books you don't like. That there's so many books, and that you have to give young people permission to abandon books that they don't like. And they need to be able to be free to do that and to basically state why. Sometimes they might not like fantasy books. They might not like the characters. It might be just too difficult. And in 1992, a gentleman, Mr. Pinnock, made a Reader's Bill of Rights for young people. And one is the right not to read something, the right to skip pages. Oh, yeah, I think I hit on something here. The right not to finish, the right to reread, the right to read anything, including at the hairdresser, People magazine. Right? That's where you read it. Or the dentist's office. That's where you get all the different magazines, anything. the right to escapism. Just on this trip, I had some things to read on the trip, and Congressman, one was the 2019 budget folder thing. Elizabeth can testify, had that notebook. However, in the airport, I saw a book based on the new FX series about a murder or something. So I kind of bought that too. So, yeah, escapism. The right to read anywhere, anytime. You could just read. The right to browse, just casually. The right to read aloud. And the right to not defend your tastes. And if you like to read Daniel Steele, that is okay. You don't have to read War and Peace or pretend that you're reading something if it's heavy, that you don't have to do that. Because when you give young people the freedom to choose the books or to enjoy things or they're becoming critics. They're saying, they're picking out, studies have shown that they read better, they read more, and they have a better opportunity to be lifelong readers. Because what has happened is that you have been able to help them retain the joy of reading, that's the part of it, that you do it. And give them permission to read comic books. Ooh, that one went down, but it's like, ooh, comic books. Yes, comic books. Comic books, especially for what they're sometimes called reluctant readers. If you see a young person that just reads comic books, that just wants to read comic books, please resist the urge to say, put that down, or read something more worthwhile, or don't you want to read, what was it, Julie of the Wolves? No, I want to read the Avengers. And the new movie's coming out, and that they're doing that. They are reading, they are using comic books as a vehicle to literacy. There's a visual literacy, there are all types of literacy, and allowing them to read freely. Graphic novels are becoming one of the most widely used type of literature in helping reluctant readers. And I mentioned Captain Underpants. How many of you are familiar with Captain Underpants? Oh, okay. Because Dave Pelkey, who had reading difficulties as a child and started, and a wonderful teacher realized that he had artistic abilities, was able to capture that for him. And recently, the Library of Congress sponsors a national book festival each year. And for one day, you have over 100 authors, all ages, are there, over 150,000 people, just a celebration of books. And this past year, we had authors like David McCullough and Condoleezza Rice and just David Baldacci. So you had a wide variety of people. But the person who had 4 hours of a waiting line was Dave Pelkey with Captain Underpants. It was the most spectacular thing to see. The kids were sitting and waiting in line. Their parents and caregivers were going, getting them food to bring to the line. He signed every book. And to see those young people, girls, boys, everybody just waiting in line for this person, let you know that there is the joy and the freedom of being able to pick and not be judged by what you read. That gives us all, I think, hope. He was also ready to talk about his next book, series that's popular, Dog Man. And even though you cringe and you think, wow, you know that that's going to be a bestseller too. Now, I had hoped when we have time for some question and answer, things like that, that someone will ask about ebooks and that. Now, for adults, ebooks are very, very popular for a lot of reasons. And many of you may know what gave even ardent supporters of print pause when ebooks came out, because it's like that's going to be the end of the printed book. It's going to be so easy, you can put them on your devices and that. And what has happened in the last few years is that ebook sales have leveled out, and there's been a resurgence in the print publishing industry, and independent bookstores are coming back. Not the big box bookstores as much, but independent bookstores are doing well. And the number one in terms of publishing now is children's books and graphic novels and young adult literature. And that's where the rise has been in terms of publishing. Now, being a children's librarian, I have to end before we open it up for questions, and I'm going to come from behind the podium because they gave me a kind of Oprah microphone, so I can't wait to do it. In the introduction, it's the world's largest library, and the Library of Congress really is. And one of the joys of being the 14th Librarian of Congress, I'm a year and a half in, has been meeting my colleagues from other countries. And it's fun because you get into kind of primary documents war or challenge. So they'll say, oh, we have the Magna Carta. Well, of course you do. But, I mean, really, it's so much fun. So, well, we have Thomas Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence with footnotes on the side by Benjamin Franklin, B.F., and J.A. John Adams. And, oh, by the way, we also have the original draft that was going to be sent to King George. So I did this in Britain, so you know. That was the Declaration of Independence, and the one that John Hancock, you know, the big name, when they showed him this print, and it's just his name on it, he said, am I the only traitor? And then he sent it back so that all those other people could sign it and do that. So you get into that. But what's unique about the Library of Congress, and it's been called one of the greatest gifts that Congress has given the people of America, is that even though it's the nation's library, it is the Library of Congress, and it grew from serving Congress to being Congress and the communities that Congress serves. It is the only national library that gives a worldwide view. And that's because Thomas Jefferson said there is no subject matter that a member of Congress should not have to refer. So it is unique among other national libraries from other countries because it has everything. And so I've enjoyed talking about the fact that the Library of Congress has the world's largest collection of comic books. And we're doing pop-up exhibits, so any new, I have seen armed guards standing there beside a first edition of Superman to put it out on display. The world's largest collection of baseball cards, and we're going to put an exhibit out to coincide with the major baseball exhibit, the first one, with the All-Star game in July, and we'll have the Magna Carta of baseball. That the Knickerbocker Hotel and the thing, and these rules of baseball were lost for years and just got found 3 years ago in somebody's attic, and that they're worth, these 16 pages of rules of baseball are worth $5 million. So that'll be under wraps. So you get used to saying all that. And so I've been saying it all over, all right? And TV and everything. And I got a letter recently, and it brought it back to literacy and growing scholars and all of that for me. Now, I must tell you, when you're an administrator and you get a handwritten letter, sometimes that's not always a good thing. On note paper, it's just, you know, you wonder. But this one, when I started looking at it, I went through the, and I have it here, and it's got the official thing. They log in the letters and everything. And so the lady came to me and she said, I think you might want to see this one. Dear Miss Carla Hayden, Carla, Librarian of Congress, I'd like to say a few words about your library. I don't like the fact, and it's F-A-C-K-T, that I'm 8 years old, and my birthday is in August. So when I am 8, you probably will get this letter. So I don't like the fact that you have to be 16 years or older to use the Library of Congress. I was just thinking that kids over 6 can use the materials. I just think that kids can also use, if you put a few rules about using the books and other materials. I'd love to visit your amazing library. It's just that you think that kids would damage your materials. There are also some other kids who would like to use them too. I think we should talk about it. In Washington, D.C. I live in California, gave his address, everything. Sincerely, Adam Coffey. P.S. I don't want to wait another 8 years to have the same privileges at the Library of Congress as adults. P.P.S. I hope to hear from you soon. So, first thing we did some research. Find this child. And we did. Adam Coffey, San Clemente, got him, and we arranged with his parents, and he, as you could probably tell, is a little advanced. And we had a conference call with him. And we had the head of our education programming, some other people, and we're all on the phone, and Adam gets on, and he was very polite. He thanked us for, you know, doing this. And we told him that his letter prompted us to think about, you know, what can we do with, and have a young reader's card that would start between 6 and 8, and we're still working on that, so that there would be an opportunity for young people to use the cards. He asked us when it would be ready. And we were like, it was worse than a congressional hearing. He was really pushing us, you know, the design, he said it, and then about a month or so afterwards, his folks brought him out, and he got to be librarian for the day and review the drafts of what the card is going to look like. But what that told us is that even though we have the papers of 23 presidents, George Washington to Coolidge, we have Teddy Roosevelt's diary that he carried in his pocket, that on February 14th he puts an X because he says, the light has gone out of my life. His wife and his mother died in the house of the same day. Even though we have the papers of Rosa Parks and her pancake, all of these wonderful things, if young people can't get access to them or really get that sense of the real thing and hear something, and you hear about Benjamin Franklin or Hamilton, but hear something in his hand, his last letter to his wife, Eliza. You know, they're singing the songs, but here's actually the thing, that you also have a responsibility to open up even more worlds for them. And so that's what we're doing, and we hope that you'll join us in that. I have started with social media. I took it as soon as I was sworn in. I said, I'm going on an adventure, and I want you to go with me. And so every day I try to post something. Now we're posting today with you, about what the Library of Congress has and the interactions. The one that recently got the most hits, I guess you call it, or likes, something like that, recently was with Dolly Parton, when she came to give the 100th millionth book to the Library of Congress with her program. And she was not supposed to sing at all. We were told she is not going to sing. This is all about the literacy and everything. But she started to read that book, The Coat of Many Colors, that told her experiences of being so proud when her mother patched together this coat, because they were, poor, and she did it. And she wore it to school, and she got bullied. And she was reading the story to the children that we had assembled, and she looked down and she said, "I saw those little faces, and I felt I had to sing to them." And next thing you know, she was singing in the grand hall of what's been called the most beautiful building in Washington, D.C., this temple to knowledge, all American made, and to show that America could have palaces and temples that rival anything in Europe, but in America, our temple was to information and knowledge. And there's Dolly Parton singing to 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. So when we think about what we can do and what our strengths are, and if we all look at ways that we can continue to work together to make sure that young people have what Frederick Douglass said, one of my favorite quotes, he said, "Once you learn to read, you'll be forever free." That if we can continue to work together and continue to have young people have that joy, I think we'll be okay. So I'm going to open it up, and I know we have some microphones, and I hope somebody will ask a question or make a comment too, and also share what's happening here to encourage literacy. We know about the Imagination Foundation, and we'll be going to the Way Library this shortly, and they have an early childhood literacy program. And there are lots of things that are going on. A lot of churches are getting involved with literacy, foundations, rec centers. Now, you can also confess what your favorite books are. People always ask a librarian, they'll ask them, "What's your favorite book?" And I'll say, "I haven't read it yet. I'm still working on it, I'm still working on it." Oh, don't be shy. Okay, don't be shy. And if not, I can keep going, so don't worry.
Dr. Hayden, thank you so much for being here. My name is Rhonda Sewell. I'm Manager of Governmental Affairs for the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library. And we love all that you're doing with Imagination Library. We really thank you. But my question, I was all prepared to come up and ask you about net neutrality and E-rates, but I'm not going to do that today. What I'm going to do is ask you, all of us have within us a book that follows us throughout time. Mine is Octavia Butler's Kindred. Is there a particular book that you just reread over the course, or have reread over the course of your lifetime? What is that particular book?
Well, there's a book that I talk about, and I've been talking about, that had an impact on me that I still look at fondly, and that's the book Bright April by Marguerite D'Angeli. And that author, illustrator, and Mr. Hillenbrand knows her, that wrote books about young people from different cultures at a time in the 1940s, late 40s, after World War II, and beautiful illustrations. But for me, it was the first book I learned about library fines. My mom reminds me of that, because I checked it out over and over and over and over and over and over. And I was about 8, and I was a brownie, and there was this little storefront across the street from the grammar school, PS 96, and I don't remember who put that book in my hand. But once I got it, I saw a little girl who was a brownie, and she was brown, and she had two pigtails. And that was the first time I'd seen myself in a book. And I love reading, so when I love books, but to see, wow, that's what I just love that book. And even to this day, even after, and I talked to Mr. Hildebrand about this, in the 70s when I was going to library school, and that was quite a time. And I was going to do a thesis on the depiction of African Americans in children's literature, because I was going to show all this stuff. And I'm reading about different stereotypical depictions, and I see Bright April on the list. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Not Bright April. What was wrong with that book? Because I still had my copy. I bought a copy later, and so this is my book, right? And I was like, what? And they went through and they critiqued it, and they said, oh, well, her brother was playing with drumsticks, and her sister could only be a nurse instead of a doctor. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. This was written in 1948, okay? And then I said, but I still love this book. This book meant something to me. And now that I've been talking about the book and that experience, I've gotten letters from and met women from all backgrounds. One from a lady in Minnesota who said, dear Miss Hayden, I've heard you talk about Bright April. That was my favorite book too. I was a handicapped young girl in Minnesota, Caucasian, and Bright April appealed to me. And that's what told me. The other story about judging books from other times and looking at them and what's your favorite was about my brother, who around this same time, I'm still trying to work this thesis out. It was starting to get a little shaky. So, because seeing Bright April, so I said, the academics, when we get a thesis or something, we're gonna prove it. So I said, okay, I'm gonna get my brother Bruce, who was about 5 at the time. And I thought I had influenced him, I'm conscious. So Bruce knew about all kinds of things he was supposed to not say or do or anything, right? And I put all these children's books with African American depictions in front of Bruce and went away and said, now Bruce, I want you to tell me which book you don't like the most and which one you like the most. And I put Little Black Sambo in there, right? So I'm really being scientific. That's right. I'm really doing it. And I had all the other ones that were supposed to be really good, real recent. I come back, and there's Bruce with Little Black Sambo. So, right, Bruce, so that's the book you don't like, right? I said, no, that's the book I like. Bruce, wait, that's Little Black Sambo. Did you look at the book? Yeah? I said, well, you mean, yeah, that's my favorite. I said, well, why? He said, because of the pancakes. Okay, well, there we go. So here are adults putting all this stuff and all Bruce at 5. He said, yeah, because when grandmother makes pancakes, I really like it, and I like the pictures, and it reminds me of the pancakes. So my dissertation actually ended up about children's services and museums. Didn't work out.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Brassfield, and I am the district librarian for Findlay City Schools. And you asked what was going on now, and I just wanted to say that our community foundation just gave us a grant for $6,000 for comic books, graphic novels, and manga.
Yay.
So our community is supporting our comic book habit. Yay. So thank you to the community foundation. And I also wanted to ask, school librarians have been under attack now for years, and Ohio is in the top 10 offenders for getting rid of school librarians. I'm the only certified librarian in my district. See her mouth open?
Well, that puts a lot on you.
Yeah, Well, and I work with some of the best library aides I've ever seen in my life. They're dedicated and very passionate. But what could the people in this room do to help support our school libraries when our school district is facing a deficit this year? So I'm afraid they're going to take away days or hours or things like that. Is there anything that our stakeholders can do to help with that?
One of the things you might want to work on, you mentioned the library aides, but also getting a real volunteer group, retired teachers, retired librarians, people in the community that could come in and help. Some of the retirees or some of your best volunteers, they're dependable. They come and they know. And for a lot of young people, they might not have grandparents that are close or anything, so that generational part is really good. But to really see if you can get people to help in that way. Count those hours though, and translate what that would be in terms of dollars. That's always good when you see, because those volunteer hours are actually worth something in people power. And also any partnerships you could have with other groups that could come in and do different activities, art activities, things like that. But it's hard because school libraries, when school budgets are being cut, that is also a place that really can suffer. So yes, I said, wow, for you. Any partnership with the public library system that you could have. You have your public library people here, and that might be a way, because as you know, school libraries are where they learn the reading habit first in terms of borrowing. And so the connection with the school library, public library might be good too. But hang in there too.
Good morning, I'm Kathy Khrushchev, and I'm with the Community Foundation, so thank you so much for that shout out. We were very happy to do that. My question has to do with the role of the Library of Congress. How do you, to me, you run the risk of becoming a museum of knowledge, and I'm curious about this idea of, you're the repository of all of these archival and primary texts of our country, and that's great and that's worthwhile, but it seems that it ought to be going the other way. So can you talk to me about that? I don't know her either.
But thank you for that, because part of what I've been doing, and when I was nominated, and I had to think about it because, and I know people say, you had to think about being a librarian of Congress. Yes, I did. Because in my career, I had gone from teaching library science at University of Pittsburgh, where I'm sending out new librarians, and they're coming back and saying, no, it's not what you're saying. And being boots on the ground in communities where you know it works, being in a state library in Maryland where we had rural areas, you really knew that what you were doing was reaching people. And what really turned me with the Library of Congress, because yes, the world's largest library, it has all of these things. The librarians are curators at museum. I mentioned guards. There's a vault that I don't even know the combination to. We have a piece of box hair and Mozart stuff. Just stuff was the fact that it is a treasure chest. And it's America's treasure chest. And I was asked, could I open up that treasure chest to as many people as possible, including young people? And that's what hooked me. So what's happening now is we're working on all types of outreach programming, including 18-wheelers that will go, And the library had one about 15 years ago, but will pull up into rural areas or pull up, and you will have experiences with live from the library, and with technology you'll be able to talk to the curators in Washington and also learn about things like preserving your own family photos and how to preserve your own history and do all of those things. More teaching with primary resources. That's a program that the library has, but reaching out to teachers and school librarians about using primary resources, digitizing all of this unique material and putting it up so it could be downloaded. So you could look at Teddy Roosevelt's diary, working with curriculums K through 12 to make sure that we make that direct connection to what's being taught. And then doing exhibits, the baseball exhibit, taking the things out of those vaults and putting them on display for people to see Branch Rickey's assessment of Ernie Banks. Said he had potential. You know, he was the scout. These kinds of things, all of this cool stuff. Let everybody see it and let it do it. So that's the kind of thing. So it's not, as we said, and we're getting the hook, because now you really got me going with what the Library of Congress could do. You've got all of this cool stuff, but if you don't let people see it, then it is a mausoleum. And we don't want to be a mausoleum. We want everybody to feel pride in this is your library. So thank you for that.
Dr. Hayden, thank you so much. So everyone knows this is her first official visit in the state of Ohio since becoming librarian, and you all got to be part of it. We have many people to thank, but first among them our sponsors, First Federal Bank of the Fridays at Findlay series. Obviously, none of this would happen without you, so thank you so much. Cindy Leahy, where is Cindy? There she is. Trust me, this also wouldn't happen without Cindy Leahy, so. And Cindy and several other staff members will be at either door on your way out if you are interested in registering for next month, again, April 27th. Everybody has some connection with animals, right? I mean, I say whether you pet them, feed them, ride them, or eat them, we've got you covered. So you'll want to come. You'll want to be part of this. So, and it's also a huge and fast-growing industry. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, lots of opportunities there too. Now, on your way out, in addition to registering for next month, the librarian and Elizabeth Torkelson, who also came from the Library of Congress, they have brought brochures about the Library of Congress. And I'm curious, how many people have visited the Library of Congress, the Jefferson Building in Washington, D.C.? Okay, it looks like maybe about half of you. It truly is the most amazing building. We had an alumni and donor event there a couple of years ago, and I know some folks from here came to that, and it's absolutely stunning. And also we have bookmarks, and those will also both be on the registration tables. So pick those up, and next time you're in Washington, or make a special trip and go and see it. I wanted to mention the Latta household. We have the entire collection of Captain Underpants. One of our daughters was very much in that frame of mind. I mean, for a long period of time, it seemed to us. And so we have all of those books. But do pick up brochures and take one on your way out, or a bookmark, and the bookmark has the website on it. So you'll want to enjoy that too. So April 27th, next month, the AMU is where we will be for our final of the spring series. There are cards on your table for feedback on today's session, and also any other ideas you have for future Fridays at Findlay. We always appreciate hearing from you with your suggestions. As Dr. Hayden mentioned, we're on a pretty tight timeline because she and Will Hillenbrand, who we are so delighted that we have, who drove up from Cincinnati, a very noted illustrator of children's books, and they are going to be reading to a group of children from Jacob's School here. They are going to be reading from his newly illustrated book that just came out, right? I mean, just came out, I'm a Duck. So I'm sure at some point, if you're interested in purchasing copies, we have those at our Mazza Museum gift shop. And also, if you have not been to the Mazza in recent years, I know Ben Sapp and his team would love to have you come and see. We absolutely value the importance of visual literacy, and we watch it and see how it absolutely impacts literacy. And we all know literacy is at the core of seeking knowledge, and so that's why we take this so seriously at University of Findlay, why we so believe in how Mazza relates to our core mission of education. And so we're thrilled that you are about to see it and to read to children over there. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. One more round of applause for our speaker.